Hey guys, it's September 7th, 2021. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop FlossTube, and today is Stitchy Talk, and we're just going to sit and stitch, and sometimes I have a really specific thing that I'm going to teach. Today, what I'm going to talk a lot about is stitching in hand, and the way that I'm able to stitch in hand. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. I have everything in my bag. I usually keep all my projects in some type of bag. And we're just going to pull everything out of the bag and just kind of start. So today we're working on Stitch-O-GRAPHY, and this is a PDF pattern you can purchase. So because it's not a free pattern, we've covered up part of it. Now tomorrow, part 4 is right here. So this is what I needed to have done for tomorrow, but I went ahead and started part 5, and I'm just gonna kind of stitch across, and I figured we could talk about putting words in, and then how I do the border, and how I travel, and kind of the difference between light and darker threads. And of course, this is just how I stitch. So I'm gonna be working with the pink. So I usually just pull the thread out that I'm working with at the time and leave everything else in my bag so I don't drop it. So I'll kind of put this to the side. And the one thing that I do need from my bag are my Wonder clips. So what I like to do before I'm stitching is think about where I'm going to stitch, and really today this is what I was supposed to be stitching, but since it was Labor Day I had a lot of time, and anytime you're working on a project I always feel like if you can get ahead it's gonna make the project a little bit more enjoyable as you go. So I'm ahead, and then I just stitched this right before we started and I had already done this. So I'm gonna kind of be stitching here. So what I like to do is roll up one of the sides so that I can have as little excess out of the way as possible. And I'll kind of move it as we go. So, and when I put the little clamp, I try not to put it on any stitching. And then over here I will just do a little bit. And then my needle, of course, I rolled up. And for needles, I usually use them until they bend. So this one hasn't bent yet, but if it bends, that's when I kind of get rid of my needle, because that's a question that I get quite a lot. And this one I'm using Cosmo, and I have it on my floss biddies. And I'm just going to pull one strand off. Cosmo is really nice. It's very similar to DMC. It's a little bit shinier, if I had to guess. And then I usually just put everything back on and then put it back in my bag. Now to take one single strand off, what I like to do is, you can kind of see it here, is if you just kind of go like that, you'll be able to pull one. You want to fan it out. So you just pull one. Make sure you're not pulling two, and keep your left hand as still as possible, and just pull it. And then I'll just move this out of the way. Now I always start with a loop method. So there's 2 strands here, and I do that even with hand dyed. I know you're not supposed to, but I like to go as fast as possible. And then what I'm going to do is start here, and it's easy. So where the red X is, I'm going to skip one and go to the next one. And doing this is going to show you how I travel and how I stitch in hand. And of course I can answer any questions as we go, but that's the biggest question I get, is stitching in hand. So we can use this as kind of a stitching in hand video. And you can see I am not sticking and stabbing, I'm kind of rolling the needle. And it takes a little bit of time. I will say by doing that, I do have calluses on this finger because of that. So that's one little side effect that you will get. And hello to everyone. You can tell me where you're watching from. We are located in Austin, Texas. So the weather here is nice and hot, but we're moving into fall. It's going to be really nice. And another thing that you'll notice when I'm stitching is hand in hand, and I do this, is I always have, so I'm right-handed, so I stitch with my right hand and I keep my left hand anchored. So I'm not ever moving this. So this is solid on a surface so that this hand can kind of just keep going. So let's see. So I'm going to try to memorize what I'm doing and then answer some questions. And one of the questions we have this morning is, what color besides black would all the trimmings look good on? Vintage Country Mocha, and I do believe we have talked about that in a previous live stream, so you can check out some previous live streams. Vintage Country Mocha is the only one we could find, but to be honest, I don't think it's going to look like a 10 out of a 10 like the black does. Thank you, FQS, for reigniting my love for cross stitch. I just started today after 20 years since my last project. Awesome. I think it's always great to go back to crafts. I used to crochet, so at some point, maybe I'll go back to crochet too. Any thoughts on a Cosmo thread club? I think that would be really hard to do. The thread is much harder to source than some others, so I think that might be a little too risky. And I only like to offer things that I know will be available easily. So here you're going to see that I travel up, and so I do my normal X, bottom left, top right, bottom right, top left. And if I started the next one, then I would be coming up this same hole. So what I'm going to do is go the other direction. I'm going to go top right, bottom left, but you'll see that that cross or that stitch lays the same direction as the one below it. And actually, I don't think I have enough over here pulled. I'm not, because it's kind of heavy. And the point of having everything kind of rolled up is so that my hand doesn't have to move too much here. Let's see. And then someone is asking if with this method does my thread tangle less. In fact, it does not. It probably tangles more because the nap of the thread is going two different directions. I just think it's simpler to stitch this way and have a neater back. And I stitch so much that I have to be efficient with my time. So anything I can do to save a little bit of time, you know, if you're just stitching a little bit every now and then, it's not going to matter. But because I stitch probably 20 hours a week at a minimum, I have to save any seconds that I can. Should I split my threads when stitching? So that is called railroading, and that would be like this. You put your needle in between the thread and go down. And on this project, I have not been railroading. I think it's just kind of working out where I don't feel like I need to. Now, I usually railroad with white always because my white threads always look messy. And then Renee would like a tip on getting her threads to not twist. So I will show you that in 1 second. And if you'll have any questions on how I'm traveling or anything, let me know. So from here, if your threads are twisting, what I would do is unthread your thread, put your needle through the thread, and completely separate. So move one thread to the left, one thread to the right, and then rethread. When using a pen to mark your borders, how do you know when to use heat versus cold water? Are the pens color coded for heat? So I think you're referring to friction pens. I actually, they'll say friction and they'll say, they'll have a note on them, but I would just use those for finishing. I wouldn't use those for my regular stitching. And on that, the only ones that I know they remove with heat. Now here, one thing I wanted to talk about is you've seen that when I went from my E to my A, I moved at the top. Well, if you look at my T, if I stay at the top and go all the way over, I'm going to skip 3 stitches. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to travel down so that I can travel this way. So I'm always thinking about, I guess, where your next stitch is and how to save the most thread, because it's not really a cost thing. It's more of a time thing, because I don't want to have a big mess on the back. And I want to have to change threads as least often as possible. So I hope you guys are stitching with me, and if you are, would love for you to tell me what pattern you're working on, and if you're working on any Sunflower Septembers. I've seen a lot of really cool tiered trays. And so I'm just going to keep going. So just keep traveling. How do I stitch when there's only like 2 or 3 stitches? I start with a loop, but how do I finish? I can show you when I finish this stitch, but basically you just can, I'll stop right here and show you. So we can pretend that these 3 stitches in the S, now I usually wouldn't stop already. I would usually do probably 4 more stitches. But let's just pretend you have those 3 stitches only. And we do cover this in the Cross Stitch University that will be coming out. But I would go under the stitches 3 times, or under the 3 stitches. And then I would go back through the other way, just not through that same loop because you don't want it to come undone. I would just go back through the other way. And then when I cut my thread, I try to have sharp scissors so I can cut right to the edge. And then I try to not have any like loose threads hanging out in the back. And then I just do the same thing here. Can you do free stitches with the sewing method slower, or is it easier to see? I'm not really sure of the question. So I do the stitching in hand just because for me it's quicker. And I do like the Q-snaps. I think my stitches do look much better in a Q-snap, but I have to kind of give up the Okay, so I think she's asking me to stitch slower, so I'm going to stitch these next few a little bit slower. And so you'll see sometimes I do the stick and stab, sometimes I move the needle over. Just kind of depends. And this is probably about half the speed that I normally stitch. I usually go super fast. The problem with sometimes if I go too fast, then I have to unpick stitches because I don't pay attention. But I'm usually watching TV to kind of keep myself like busy. I feel like I can be a little bit more focused if I'm watching something. And there's not a right or wrong way to cross stitch. It's a craft, so you want to be able to enjoy it. So I would say do whatever you think you enjoy, I guess, the best. And here, I'm going to go down the L and over so that I can just jump to the E. So sometimes I will stitch a row down and then back up. Sometimes I do individual stitches. Because I'm using a solid thread, it really doesn't matter. As long as my stitches can lie nicely. Should I split the sulky petite cotton before I stitch? No, you should not. Now I haven't used sulky, but that is a one strand thread, so you can't use the loop method, and I would definitely not split the threads. And then we have a question about the jolly bars for all the trimmings, and I believe there is enough fabric that you can starch on that one. Holly Martin, would it be possible to add a sort option of the newest so the newest items come up? Yes, actually, if you scroll at the top, there is that option already. It just, there's a little box at the top. I'll look at it to see what it looks, the name of it, but yes, we already have that. So unless the site's, let's see, not acting. So just go to the what's new, let's go to the top seller page. And then on the top right, it says sort by, and then the second to the bottom is newest. So we actually already have that. Now see that I've gotten here. I'm going to go ahead and roll this over, and I'm going to put this here so that I don't put it on my stitches, and I'm going to unroll this once. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit more. What size fabric would you use to make Glitter Village one piece? I'm actually going to do Glitter Village in 2022, so that's something that you guys can look forward to, and I can look forward to because I've always wanted to make that one. If you are doing a 14 count, which is what I'm going to be doing, we're going to figure out the math real quick. It finishes at 177 by 177 in stitches, which is 12 and 5/8. So if you take 177 divided by 14, so you would need a 16 by 18 inch piece. Wait, that's not right. 18 by 19. No, hold on. $18 by 18. And I think I'm going to be using Beautiful Beige for that one. I do want to say I reserve the right to change my mind because I keep changing my mind on that one. Sometimes I overthink things, and Lori tells me I definitely overthink things, and I'm like, yes, 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 I do. Do I store all my floss on floss bitties for each project? If you keep your floss, how do you store them? So we have 2 videos on cross stitch organization, and we have another one that's going to be coming out soon. And my main storage I leave on floss flowers, but I keep my floss bitties with my silk. So I put my silk on my floss bitties, my DMC on floss flowers, so that I always know the difference. And then I keep my fancy floss, which would be dyed floss, just on the cards they come on. And I just do that so that I know if I pick something up, I know, okay, this is NPI silk because it's on the card. And I keep them stored in different areas so that I can always find them quickly. And then here, I'm going to try to go the speed I usually do for one letter, just so you can see. And one thing that I'm doing is to hold the tension. You see that my finger goes over here. That holds the tension so it keeps it nice and tight. And that's how I'm able to go fast. Now, let's see. Now, see right there, I went in the wrong hole, so I'll just put it to fix it. And anytime I find that I'm in the wrong hole, I usually do pull the stitches out so that it looks better. But this chart has been a ton of fun because I love stitching text. I don't know what it is about it. I think it's the fact that it's not a lot of fill-in. It's just a lot of movement and a lot of open space so that you can actually sew a little bit faster. Mary June Thompson is asking if I ever use a thimble, and with cross stitching I don't. I will say that I have calluses right here on these two fingers, so I have a callus right here. You can see it. It always looks bruised right there. It's actually pretty dented in. That's from moving the needle, and this is from when the needle comes up. So right here I always have, you can kind of tell, they're kind of bruised calluses. So now I'm going to go ahead and end the thread. And you can tell just by looking at it that I went in the wrong hole. So to unstitch, you just do this. Someone is asking about my Aida cloth. Is it shiny? Well, this is the opalescent white, and we're supposed to have more in stock soon. We buy it by the bolt and cut it down. And I've been using this a lot because plain white Aida I feel like I just see too many of my mistakes and it just shows dirt too easily. And so that's 3 stitches. I usually count 5 stitches to go through. So and I tug it a tiny bit so that my last stitch is not kind of loose. What would the benefit of railroading your stitches be? So railroading, the benefit of doing railroading is your stitches lie nice and super flat. And white will show the most amount of flaws. Just like with cloth, your white floss will, your white floss and your white fabric is going to show your flaws the most. But railroading just makes your stitches really nice and flat. But with this project, I feel like the fabrics also, the threads, I guess the stitches move. So it doesn't have to be like perfect. Whereas if you're doing like this, so when you have a big fill-in area, which would be this, you're going to see if your stitches are wobbly. But if you're over here, you're not going to notice it as much. So if you're making something like Priscilla's jar, that is like a huge piece, if your stitches are not pretty, you're going to notice. So I just kind of, depends on the project, depends on what I'm going to do with it. I mean, and I kind of just decide as I go, I guess. And I might do it different each day. It depends, kind of whatever I feel like doing. Doesn't have to be rules. Do I use thread conditioner or beeswax? Yes, I use Lori Holt's thread conditioner a lot. I showed that on last time's video, and that's the only reason I'm not showing it this week is because I've already shown that. And on this video, I wanted to really just show kind of how I move around a piece, how I hold my my stitches. How do I finish off a single stitch in the middle of nowhere? I just go under that stitch over and over a couple of times. I definitely don't knot, but I would just kind of go under the stitch to the left, then to the right, to the left. Oh, Cynthia, that's a great point. She says it's fun to stitch letters because you see the letter and the word right away. Yes, and I also feel like with letters, you catch your mistakes quicker than if you're making like a big, huge thing and you make a mistake like on the other side of the object. That's always frustrating. Okay, so right here, see that little thing? I went under the previous stitch, like under there, and you can see it. And so, yeah, this is where I would definitely be using beeswax. Would Graceful Gray work on the Christmas for September mystery stitch? We tried it and we thought it looked horrible. So our opinion is no. And for all of you wondering what our free Christmas stitch along is, we'll be talking more about that tomorrow on our weekly live stream. And I've got part 1 done. I'm super excited, and it's a lot of fun because it's easy and it's gonna be a big enough stitch. Okay. And then at this point, I'll probably just look to make sure like I didn't skip a letter. And as I'm stitching, like when I'm looking at the P right here, I'm watching the P right here to make sure that I've started in the middle, like I'm at the right spot. So I do watch the rows around it as I go. And I do use these line keepers as I stitch. In fact, at this point, I'm going to add one right here, a third one, so that when I start looking, I'm not looking over here, that I'm just looking here. Because kind of when you get in the middle, your eye will start going wherever it's hard. When you're on the left, your eye's going to go to the left. When you're on the right, your eye's going to go to the right. When you get here, it's going to get lost. So I'm going to add another line keeper. And just keep going. And if you'll have any questions or anything, let me know. I'm happy to answer all of your questions. Oh, this is a great question. Kathy is asking what was the most difficult and the easiest project that I have done. So my most difficult, hands down, was Kringles, because that was using a linen or an even weave or a Lugana or something, but it definitely, it was just so big, and the holes. So that was my hardest. My second hardest was the Bonnie and Camille quilt bee, because that one was 18 count. So those two were difficult. My easiest would be, I mean, any of the really small ones. Like any of the Priscilla ones, those are really easy because they're so small. That one, I do a lot of easy ones, so that one's kind of... The stitch cards, those are the easiest, the stitch cards, Lori stitch cards, because those are pretty quick. And those are really fun to try to find a frame for. Do I sell Ada by the yard? We don't currently. Oh, Janine is working on Santa Baby. Oh my gosh, that one is so pretty. I didn't do that one. I can tell you though, for Stitch Quarterly, you're the one that comes and just at the last quarter of the year is gonna go with that, and it's gonna be so cute. Do the larger Lori Holt cross stitch patterns fit in one of Lori Holt's binders? If so, which one? We can add that to our list to answer tomorrow. We'd have to put those, when you put those in a binder, you'd have to put them in a plastic sheet so that you don't put a hole in the edge. So I don't know, we'll have to see. I think it might be the white one. It might work, but I can't promise. And I love that all of you are working on different things. Y'all are working on And to All a Good Night, Homegrown, Granita, August calendar crates, October calendar crates. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to start October calendar crates. When is this quarterly stitching club coming out? Well, tomorrow. It already shipped to customers, so if your credit card went through, it shipped to you. Should be getting it. And I love this one. I'm going to be stitching it as part of Stitch-Tober. So the last 2 years we've done Stitch-Tober. So right now we're working on like kitting all my projects, getting everything ready, and I'm excited to do this one. I think you guys are going to love it. And it's going to kind of go with another thing that we're releasing today. I think they're similar colors, and I think that if you stitched them both together, they would look nice next to each other on a shelf or something. When will Lori Holt's Stitch Card J be available? We do them every quarter, so off the top of my head, I don't know, because we just did I, so J would probably be December. Something like that. But there are ones, we do them on the first of the month at the beginning of the quarter. Do I have a recommendation for a lap stand that holds the Q-snaps? I don't, but I think you could ask Jan Hicks. She uses a lot of stands and she has a lot of experience with it. So I would ask her on her channel. Her channel is Jan Hicks Creates. And just ask her. I mean, she'll answer your comment. I think she would probably have the most experience with that. Oh, Karen is asking if it's true that you put stiff Aida in the dryer with a wet towel to help it unstiffen. Well, I don't, because I would be too scared it would shrink. But yeah, I don't do that. I just stitch it right out of the gate. And I actually like the Aida to be super stiff. So the stiffer the better. If it's too flimsy, what I'm doing won't work, because you see that it's stiff and my hand holds it. If it's flimsy, that's not going to work, because it's going to be like this in my hand. So, and every brand is a little bit different, and so it's always good to try different brands, which is why when we're offering kits or sew-alongs, you'll notice we try different brands of fabric, different brands of floss, just different brands, because it's always fun to change things up, but it will help you get a feel for what brand you like the best. Okay, so my thread just came undone, which means it's probably time to end the thread. That's how I kind of know. And Suzanne is asking, how do I know how tight to pull my stitches? Well, I just pull them where they look pretty, but I think it just comes with experience. That would be, I'm going to go ahead and try to do these 3 without it coming undone. We'll see. I bet it comes undone anyway. And if you've ever seen on like social media when people talk about thread chicken, what that means is that you're almost like, say you're doing the heart and you just need to get a couple stitches in, and you play thread chicken to try to use all your thread on your needle so you don't have to rethread. And so I just go under my previous stitches. So what did you guys do for Labor Day? I hope that all of you had a nice day off. I got to drive really far away. I was in my car 4 hours yesterday. I almost ran out of gas. That's a good story. So I had to go to this really small town to pick up Emma. And I have this thing. and it's a routine. I'm a very creature of habit, and every Sunday I fill my car up with a tank of gas. Even if I have 3/4 of a tank, I always want to start my week off where when I get in the car to go to work, I have a full tank of gas. I'm just making sure I'm in the right spot. So I thought I can go to this small town, can come all the way back almost to my house, to the 7-Eleven by my house, and get gas. Well, I left the town. I'm on a highway, and Emma said there's 2 gas stations. So I said, okay, good. We'll just leave the town. We'll go to these gas stations outside of town. Well, both of the gas stations were out of gas. So I was like, Emma, where's the next gas station? And she was like, 19 miles. And I literally had like 24 miles of gas. And she said, do you think we'll make it? And I said, well, we'll see. Because, I mean, you know, like if I ran out of gas, Kevin could just come save us. So it would have been fine, though, if the 2 gas stations weren't out of gas. So, and I know it was Sunday. I mean, I know it was actually Monday, but, you know, it was a holiday. So I didn't fill up on Sunday. I filled up on Monday. But that was kind of fun because she was like, oh, do you think we're going to make it? And I kept asking her, how many more miles? How many more miles? So that was kind of fun. I know that's probably not really funny, but we were close enough to home to where I knew Kevin could come rescue us, which I know that's really sad, but I've rescued him plenty of times running out of gas, so it would have been payback. So just as like a reference, in the amount of time we've been doing this video, I probably could have done double the amount. I'm just going super slow to answer questions. But I can usually gauge how long a section is going to take me, which is always fun to be able to kind of gauge. I like to set little mini goals. I've been kind of out of things to watch on TV, so it's been a little bit harder for me to stay motivated stitching. But yesterday, one of my favorite YouTubers had a 2-hour video, and I was so excited. I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Gave me something to, so to finish something last night. I got a lot of stuff done this weekend. It was really fun. What was funny, the first thing Emma said when she got in the car, she said, what did y'all do when I was gone? And I had to tell her we got Chinese food, which is like, Kevin does not like Chinese food. So I said, but there's plenty of leftovers. The first thing she did when she got home was heated up the chicken. So Delinda is still working on flea market flowers, so that's awesome. I did go to the framer. That was one thing. Oh yeah, I'm on the wrong letter. Yeah, I'm on the wrong letter. Thanks, Denise. See, I did CROR. So that's why you move the line keeper. So there we go. That's exactly why I moved the line keeper. Okay, so I'm going to pull this out. So I was basically doing I was back over here. I got too carried away with my gas story. And the gas was super cheap too. When I got gas, I was like, man, I should drive over here to get gas. I got to remember where I was at to unpick my stitches. Do I stitch each stitch individually all of the time? No, I don't. That's a great question. So if I'm doing text, I do. But if I was doing the heart, I would go all the way across and all the way back. Okay, so right here, I kind of messed up my thread. So we'll see if it'll go back together nicely. If not, I will just finish off. And this is how I undo my stitches, which this happens all the time. I'm sure this happens to you guys. So let's see. Yeah, I gotta go all the way back down and take all these out. I'm looking forward to starting the Christmas mystery tonight. The biggest challenge is getting my printer to make a good copy of the charts. You can always go to Kinko's and get those done, but that's kind of the beauty of a free chart is you kind of have to print it yourself, so that would be the disadvantage. Okay, so now you can see, look how windy that thread is. And the reason it's so windy is because I just stitched it and unstitched it, so it's trying to form back the stitches that it was in. So what I'm going to do is separate my stitches and see how it looks. I did get to go to the framer on Saturday, so I left 4 big projects at the framer. And I already have 3 things there, so now I have 7 things at the framer, and they always crack up when I go because I leave my design boards there and they'll always give them to me. They know when I come they'll give me my design boards back. So I just kind of straighten it back out. Okay, let's see. So I've answered the bottom 2. Any info on Halo Goes or others would be great. Is it a blue light? It's not blue. It's definitely just a clear light. I do use Halo Go all the time. And I also have another one in my room that I use. So I use 2 different lights. It depends where I'm sitting. Kim is asking what I do when I'm finished with a project. So when I went to the framer, what I do is I just iron it, set it aside, and then I'll iron it one more time. And I try to iron with no steam, but if the creases will not come out, then I do put a little bit of steam. I do try to iron on the back. We do sell something that is manufactured by Yarn Tree that you can put on the top so that your stitches don't get too mushy. I can't remember what it's called. But it's, let me think, it's Yarn Tree. I'm trying to think of what it's called, but I have it at home and I've used it before, but I tend to just iron my projects. Ultimate Pressing Cloth. So if you guys have ever tried that, y'all can give it a review. So here you can see I went a little bit too far over. That's the hole it should be in. And so I just unpull it. And usually I use a magnifier so that doesn't happen. If you have to remove a bunch of stitches, do you stop your timer asking for a friend? No, I don't stop my timer. So the timer she's asking about is I time my stitches, and the only reason I really do that is so that I'll be able to know, like if I do calendar crates August and it takes 15 hours, well then I'll know that okay, for September it'll be about 15 hours, for October it'll be about 15 hours. So I don't stop the stopper. I just I figure that on the next one I'll probably make the same mistake. Who is the YouTuber I watch for 2 hours? Oh gosh, y'all probably shouldn't ask me this question. It's called Bella Grande Media. B-E-L-L-A space Grande, G-R-A-N-D-E Media. And it is 3 psychologists who analyze crime cases. And they have a real funny humor, but it's true crime and you might not like it. But the guy who started it, his name is Dr. Todd Grande, and I watch every one of his videos. He is hilarious, and I just find him to be very funny. Sometimes I don't get his jokes, so I'm going to put the paper over the next one. So that's who I watch. But he's got a podcast, YouTube. He's got all kinds of things. But he's a psychologist. And so I'm just going to stitch. I'll try to stitch all the way across real quick. I'll try to go a little bit faster. Let's see. 1, 2. I notice a difference in the height of stitching in hand. Is it common? Should I commit to one way for each project? Yeah, I would. If you're using a hoop, I would use the hoop for the same project. If you're stitching in hand, do that one project. Now, if you look, and this would actually be a great thing to do for the channel, maybe we do that in the next couple of weeks. If you lay a project down, and we'd have to do it on something that's not finished, but if you lay something down that I have stitched right next to something Cheryl has stitched, it looks totally different. Her stitches are 100% flat, 100% perfect, but she uses a hoop. She uses a spring tension hoop. And in the end, anyone who's in my house looking, they would have no idea. But I'm always in awe of Cheryl's stitches. When I see a sample, I always know if Cheryl stitched it or if somebody else did. So everyone's stitches have their own unique look. My stitches don't look as good as Cheryl's. So if you handed me a project that I did and she did, I would be able to tell the difference. But I think you just come up with the way that you think is good for you. And a huge thank you from Piggy to Seven and the Littlest Mew for our super chat. Okay. So I got to figure out where I'm at. Eat, sleep, cross. I need to look at the front and see because I'm getting confused. So one more S. So sometimes I'll pull out I gotta do one more S. So I'm kind of at the bottom. That's the 3 S's. What needles am I using? I am using Pat Carson size 26. If I am stitching on 16 count, I will use Bowen, but for 14 count, I use Pat Carson. Where do I find the metal stand to hold your pattern? So the metal stand you might be talking about is Lori Holt's book stand. We're working on a new color right now, and I think there might be some others that are sold by, I'm trying to think of the company name. They're called Loran magnetic stands. They have a magnetic stand. I usually just leave my pattern flat. But we are working on something new for Lori Holt that you guys are going to love to hold your patterns. Pamela for the weekend drove 5 hours to move her daughter's stuff into her university, toured the school, found her classrooms, hit the bookstore, shopped for a bed and a few other items, officially an empty nester. Oh my gosh, I bet you were crying. I was just talking about that earlier. I can't even imagine Emma going to college. I cannot even imagine. She's always talked about leaving the state, and I've always told her, like, why? What's the point? Like, why do you think you need to go to California to go to school? And several of her friends have gone to UT, and several of her friends want to go to UT, and one of them made the Palm Squad. So she is like, maybe I'll do the Palm Squad. I'm like, oh, that would be awesome. Because I don't want her to go too far. I will say this weekend, another funny thing was I noticed all of a sudden there was all these clean clothes like just thrown on top of the washing machine. And I was like, Kevin wouldn't have done that. Like, he would have folded the clothes. I was like, what is going on? So I went and asked Kevin. I said, Kevin, are you washing clothes? And he said, no, Peyton and Emma are washing clothes. So they washed clothes, which I was actually pretty happy they washed their own clothes. And then they just pulled what they wanted to wear and put the rest on the top of the washing machine. So, hey, at least they're washing their own clothes. I thought that was a great step. I'm like, well, we can teach them how to fold next. Emma actually took all hers upstairs. It was Peyton that left all his on top of the thing. But it was funny because they must have been fighting for time with the washer, and I thought that's great. Okay, so let's see. T. What do the numbers for the needles represent? So size 24 is a fatter needle, and you would use that with like a 10 count or an 11 count. Size 26 is kind of a medium, and by that I mean the width of the needle. Size 26 I use for 14 count and 25 count. Size 28 needles you use for 18 count, but I actually also use size 28 needles for 16 count, whereas most people would use a size 26 needle for 16 count. So I say, just like everything else, it's all personal preference, whatever works best for you. But a size 24 is super fat, a size 26 is medium, and a size 28 is tiny. Now the size 28 will poke you more because the tip is sharper. Oh, and Piggy says thank you to Valeria Bauer for her super chat. She's always here. She must be my biggest fan. She's always in the chat. What is my favorite cross stitch project that I have hung in my home? I can tell you. I made it last year. It goes across, it's got the reindeer and it's got the houses, and I think it's called And to All a Good Night. Away we go. So I love that one. And have you decorated for fall? That was one thing I really wanted to do this weekend, but with Emma going out of town, and then the boys they actually had basketball on Labor Day. I was like, okay, that's interesting. I kind of just got lazy and didn't decorate, but I'm going to decorate for fall this weekend. I've already told Emma. She's like, well, I have lunch plans on Saturday. And I'm thinking, who at 14 years old has lunch plans on a weekend? Apparently my daughter does. So, but it's one of her friend's birthdays. So I told her, I said, we need to figure out what you're going to get. And she's like, oh, Mom, I cannot think about that. That's just too much to think about. And I thought, oh my word, to be a teenager and to have only that to worry about would be awesome. Okay, so I'm going to do 3 more letters. So any last minute questions you have, just pop them in. I'll try to answer anything you want me to demo. But this video, I kind of wanted to just be stitch in hand, so that you could see how I hold my fabric. Now this isn't going to work for everybody, and don't feel like it has to work for you. It's just kind of what I do. And I always say that because I don't want you to ever feel like you have to do things the way I do, because that's not how life really works. One person's love or method might not match someone else's. So I do have something I could tell y'all though that's kind of a secret. I am gonna get lens replacement next Monday for my eye, so I'm super excited, because one of the things about doing the videos, these Stitchy talks, is really hard for me to see. I actually can see better at the screen that I'm watching rather than in person, so I'm hoping that if I get lens replacement, I will be able to see better, and it'll make doing the videos a little bit easier to toggle between answering questions and all of that. So from here, I'm going to, because I cannot finish just going straight up like that, I'm going to just go across diagonally a couple of times. I do have a question if I was going to show a quarter stitch. So I ended up showing that last week. It was actually a 3/4 stitch. So if you watched last Wednesday's, I went ahead and did it early. So roll a little bit more, and then I'm just going to do 2 more. And then Beth said, on the stitch along dates, are those the dates we should start or have it finished? So those are the dates to have it finished. And that's just an estimate. I mean, you can always stitch. A lot of people do our stitch alongs a year or 2 later, so they last forever. Brenda said she downloaded a free ladybird chart. What stitch does the line drawn circle around the body of it? It's probably a back stitch. And you will see that I try to pick projects that don't have back stitches. I don't love back stitching. So if I pick a project with back stitches, that means I must really love it. So I'm going to stitch this one really fast. This is like the more the speed I go. Hopefully I'm on the right letter. Yeah, I'm curious what you guys watch when you're cross stitching. Do you watch TV? Do you listen to stuff? I'm like really big into YouTube. We did get Peacock TV, which I guess is free, and it only has 1 ad, so it's pretty good. But I'm kind of out of things to watch. I think, watched everything. There's a couple of new things on Netflix that are available, but they're dubbed, so they're like filmed in France, and then they're overdubbed, so you have to read the words. Well, I can't read the words and stitch, so I had to, and I heard one of them is really good. Everyone gave it like the best reviews and said the production quality was really good, so maybe I'll have to watch that when I'm not stitching. So 1 more stitch to go, and of course I'm a little bit ahead. I'm a week ahead doing this, but since it was Labor Day, I had some time, and it's fun to get ahead a little bit. So as you can see, I just kind of move around whatever. It's fun to do letters. So just a couple more stitches. Okay, I finally got a knot. So I haven't got very many knots today. And it's one thing I like about Cosmo is I don't get as many knots. Now, I want to show you, this is the #1 knot that I get. It's that little circle. And the way you get it out is you literally just pop it out. Some threads I get more knots, and I get the most knots with DMC, but at the same time it is the least expensive, so it's kind of a trade-off. I get the least amount of knots with NPI and Aura Floss though. Those are the 2 that I get the least amount. But everyone's different. Cheryl doesn't agree with that statement for her, so that's the beauty of cross stitching, is everyone's a little bit different. And I'm sure it has to do with the way you hold your thread, the way you hold your fabric, all of that. So let's see. And then I'll just make sure I'm kind of in the right spot. And I can just tell right there I'm not in the right hole. I can just see it. So none of you have answered to tell me if you've decorated for fall. So that makes me feel good because I haven't decorated for fall. Emma told me it's not even September 1st when I first started talking about it. So, because I wanted to decorate 2 weekends ago. So I said, okay, I'll wait. And then I feel like I'm waiting too long. But I think most of my stuff is at the storage unit, and UT played this weekend. So I didn't want to like wake Kevin up and be like, oh, can you go to the storage unit? Because he likes to watch like the pre-roll, the after-roll, the whatever. I actually fell asleep in the middle of the game. And I was actually, I fell asleep and I was so happy because he didn't yell one time. And I was like, oh, you let me sleep. It was like amazing. But it's funny because, he gets a little excited, but I think they're going to actually be pretty good. It's actually, I think they're going to be a pretty good team now, so that'll be nice. Okay. Deborah thinks I have an extra stitch on the down. Are the C's different? I don't know. Let's see. I might have an extra stitch. Y'all always find my mistakes, which is awesome because now, kind of when I'm done with a project, I don't even check. I'm like, oh, if I have a mistake, they'll tell me. So let's see. I think it's right. Oh, okay, so the C here in back stitch is different than the C in cross stitch. Okay, so I get it. So this one, it's a taller, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 7 down, and this one is only 6 down, or something like that. Yeah, so there's, yeah, so that's why it's just designed different. So yeah. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun stitching with you today. As always, I'm always looking for ideas for Stitchy Talk. So if you have something specific you would like me to demo where I can really take my time, we do these the first Tuesday of every month. So comment below, let me know maybe what you learned today and what you would look forward to learning, because I'm always here to help you guys. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you tomorrow for tomorrow's live stream. Bye.